Alright, all set. And 3, 2, 1, action! This is Cinematic Motif. Hello, I'm Wanson, the film critic and a content creator, and welcome back to Cinematic Motif, where I introduce one Taiwanese film as a motif and then explore other works of similar topic in cinema around the world. Well, but I have to say I'm sorry because today we're not going to start with a Taiwanese motif because today we're going to talk about movies of Miyazaki, Hayao Miyazaki, the one of the greatest animation director in the whole world, I would say. He's Japanese, so apparently all of our films that we are going to cover today on our show will be in Japanese and from Japan. Anyway, today we're not going to have any Taiwanese movie. I hope it's okay for you, but I just want to let you know that Miyazaki is a very important of our Taiwanese, film industry because he is definitely one of the most famous, or at least Taiwanese people's favorite animation director, from Japan. Like when you talk about animation films, Taiwanese people will tell you, "Oh, are you talking about Miyazaki?" So anyway, let's get going, and I'll talk about 3 films with you today. Alright, so it all started when I watched a movie. It's kind of like a re-release of Miyazaki's movie a few days ago. I watched Howl's Moving Castle, or 霍尔的移动城堡. This is currently in Taiwanese cinema right now because, as I said, there's a re-release of this movie and kind of like a digital version of the movie. So basically, it's a 2004 Japanese animated fantasy film written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki, and this film, it was nominated for the Academy Awards, or the Oscars, for Best Animated Feature at the 78th Academy Awards. So this film is set in a fictional kingdom where both magic and early 20th century technology are prevalent, against the backdrop of a war with another kingdom. So it was wartime in this movie. It tells about the story of Sophie, a young milliner who is turned into an elderly woman by a witch who enters a shop and curses her. And later on, Sophie encounters a wizard named Howl, who actually owns a moving castle, and he then because like this guy, Howl, he actually gets caught up in his resistance to fighting for the king. Like he does not want to fight for the king. So anyway, this film's, let me talk about the background a little bit because it's really important. It is basically influenced by Miyazaki's opposition to the United States invasion of Iraq in 2003. Thus, this film came out in 2004. So this film contains a very strong, sense of anti-war themes. And I mean, as Miyazaki actually admits in a lot of interviews, this is definitely related to that Iraq invasion. And besides that, this film also talks about the theme of old age, because as we can hear in the synopsis, Sophie was turned into an old woman in the end. But can Sophie find her love in this movie? Well, that is a big question. Even if she is old, she can still find love. Wow, very interesting, right? Okay, so today, here's the goal. I want to tell you that there are so many similarities between different Miyazaki's movies. So, first of all, as we talked about, there is this sort of anti-war sense, and it's not just in this movie, but in many of Miyazaki's movie. Basically, because the Miyazaki was born during the time of World War II. So Miyazaki is not that into war, I would say. And so this anti-war theme and background is really important. It's in Howl's moving castle because apparently Howl does not want to fight for his country. But there's a very interesting thing. Eventually, at the end of the movie, Howl is fighting for his country, but he's not fighting for his country. He's fighting for the country for Sophie because he falls in love with Sophie. So eventually, I think this movie becomes a love movie. Very, very romantic, right? And secondly, a very important thing in this movie is that there is a boy with magic to save the day. In this case, it's Howl. And we're going to talk about other movies later on, and you're going to see There are so many boys who has magic in Miyazaki's movie to save the day. Now, the third thing is really important in this movie is that, at the end of the day, Howl is trying to find his own heart because he gives away his own heart to a fire, kind of like a meteor, kind of like spiritual things from the universe. And eventually he has to find his own heart so that he won't become a monster. It's really important. It's really interesting, right? Like in Miyazaki's movie, the characters are always finding a heart or finding something, being true to themselves. We're going to talk about that later in other films as well, so keep this in mind. And finally is that there are so many creatures with magic. For example, in this movie, we have this, the fire with magic, namely what I talked about, the spiritual things from the universe. So very, very interesting. And these are a lot of things that you're going to see, the recurring things that you're going to see later on in other movies. We'll talk about that later. But as I said, this movie is more of a love movie, a romantic movie, a romance. So let's play a song that is very romantic. This is 理想混蛋 Bastards and 不是因为天气晴朗才爱你 on Radio Taiwan International. This one is, the song is very, very, very romantic. From a Taiwanese young band, Bastards.
不是因为天气晴朗才爱你，不是因为看见星星才想你，不是因为刚好没有别的事，才一直在脑海里复习，拥抱你什么角度最合适。其实我常会想象我们老了的样子，左边牵着手，右手拉小狗，可能还有很多小孩子。其实我不是因为好天气才这么说，牵着你走过大雨盛开水花的路口，也是我一样喜欢的梦。不是因为天气晴朗才爱你，不是因为看见星星才想你，不是因为刚好没有别的事，才一直在脑海里复习，拥抱你什么角度最合适。其实我常会想象我们老了的样子，左边牵着手，右手拉小狗，可能还有很多小孩子。其实我不是因为好天气才这么说，牵着你走过大雨盛开水花的路口，也是我一样喜欢的梦。牵着你走过大雨盛开水花的路口，也是我一样喜欢的梦。
This is 不是天气晴，因为天气晴朗才爱你。It's not because it's a sunny day that I love you by 理想混蛋 Bastards, a Taiwanese band. Welcome back to Cinematic Motif on Radio Taiwan International. Today we're talking about movies of Miyazaki's, who is a very famous Japanese director. So we talked about Howl's Moving Castle, which is actually the movie that that makes me want to do this series. But then I want to move on to my favorite Miyazaki movie, that is Spirited Away. Okay, so Spirited Away, also known as 神隐少女 in Mandarin Chinese. This is a 2001 Japanese animated movie directed and written by Hayao Miyazaki. So this is actually it was released 3 years before Howl's Moving Castle. Anyway, this film is also a recipient of the Golden Bear Award at the Berlin International Film Festival, and it also won the Academy Awards for Best Animated Feature in the US. Very, very, very renowned film. So we talked about this movie in our main Maestro series when we were talking about, the music in Miyazaki's movie. From Joe Hisaishi. So Spirited Away tells the story of Chihiro or Sen. She's a 10-year-old girl who moves to a new neighborhood and then accidentally enters the world of kami, the world of the Japanese Shinto folklore, the world of spirits, and her parents turn into pigs by witch Yubaba, because her parents are too greedy and eating things. So Chihiro, or Sen, she takes the job working in Yubaba's bathhouse to find a way to free herself and her parents and return to the human world. So basically, Miyazaki wrote this screenplay based on the 10-year-old daughter of his friend Seiji Okuda. But anyway, I think really based on maybe based on, or at least triggered by the story, but basically this is a very, very Miyazaki story. First of all, we have this movie talking about, criticizing greediness and evil. This is a theme that you're going to see later when we talk about the next movie. Criticizing the greediness of Sen's parents. And I think maybe this is partly referring to the Japanese economic depression, or we also known as bubble economy. Yeah, 泡沫经济 in Japan. People were too greedy for somehow, and then they lost a lot of money and had this sort of great depression. Maybe, I'm thinking about maybe this is what Miyazaki is referring to. And then later on, we have a boy with magic in this movie again. Haku Bailong. He is the one to save Sen in the bathhouse. He is a very important, student of the witch Yubaba. He has magic, great magic. He can turn into a dragon, a white dragon. So a boy with magic, well checked. Another thing that we can see in Miyazaki's movie. And then thirdly, in this movie, it's talking about Sen trying to find her memories back, because Yubaba, the witch, wipes her memories away and even makes her forget who she is, what her name is. So she's trying to find her own identity, not the memories, but more of the identities and her initial motivation. So there's finding the heart, finding the true self, finding the identity. It is related to Howl's Moving Castle, right? Very, very similar themes. And then finally, in this movie, the most fascinating thing is that we can see magical creatures everywhere in this movie. We have, because it's this Japanese spiritual world, right? So you have a lot of different gods and even like frogs or different insects that talks, and even some, moving creatures there everywhere. Like even the rats can talk, and I mean, it's just brilliant. Basically, it talks about how to stay strong in a hostile circumstance, like Sen does in this movie. And I think that's why I think it's a reference. There's a reference to the Japanese bubble economy. Basically, it's Japan's journey of standing up again after the bubble economy, right? So yeah, maybe that's what Miyazaki's talking about. Let's play a piece of music from the movie. And we'll be right back on Cinematic Motif. Well, very intense track from the movie. We were talking about Spirited Away or 神隐少女. Today we're talking about movies not related to, but like directed and written by Miyazaki Gong Qi-jun. Now, the third movie I'm going to share with you today is also like Miyazaki's latest movie, The Boy and the Heron or 苍鹭与少年. It was released in 2023, last year. Written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki. So this is a very, very, dramatic film because, the dramatic of how this film was made. At the beginning, Miyazaki says, I'm going to retire. But then, after, several years, he has this new, big, fantastical films back again in 2023, which was a big surprise back in the time, in last year. So, this movie follows a boy named Mahito Maki, or Zhenren, who moves to the countryside after his mother's death, discovers an abandoned tower near his new home, and he enters this magical and fantastical world with a talking grey heron. So, basically, this movie is Miyazaki's I'm not sure if it's gonna be his final movie, but anyway, he made this movie after his announcement of retirement in 2013, and then come back to produce this movie starting in 2017, and then this film came out. He started the storyboarding of this movie in 2016, and then this film came out in 2023. Oh, I've lost track of all the times. I'm sorry. Anyway, this film was also one of the most expensive movies ever made by Studio Ghibli. So first of all, this movie talks about this idea of war and peace and anti-war again. So that's because if you have watched the movie, you would know that, as I said, the leading character is Mahito, right? Mahito's father is actually a munitioner, a arms dealer. And he's doing trading of these weapons because it was the wartime in this movie. And as we can see in this movie, Mahito is not interested in the war. He's not interested in this sort of thing. So we can see that while people are reluctant to enter or participate in the wars, which is very much the idea of Miyazaki's own childhood. He does not want to participate in the war. He's not interested in the war. Now, the other thing we can see in this movie is that due to the war and some chaos in this spiritual world, the pelicans, yes, you heard right, the pelicans in the world, they do not have any food. They don't have food and they're dying. So, yeah, this is something that we can see in our modern wartime, right? People are doing fighting, armies are fighting, but people do not have any things to eat. And then secondly, this time, we still see a boy as the leading character of this movie, but I think he's not incapable of magic at first, but eventually he's brave enough to enter the magical world and solve his and the world's problem, somehow gives him this connection to magic. So we still have this one boy with magic to solve the day idea. Well, there's a very nerdy thing. Actually, this idea comes from the Bible. The Bible, Jesus. But anyway, this is a very, very nerdy thing. So anyway. Now, finally, in this movie, we can also see that Mahito is trying to face the evil side of himself. He's trying to be true to himself. At the end of the movie, I don't want to tell you, I don't want to be a spoiler. But anyway, at the end of the movie, you can see that Mahito is facing his own evil side of himself and admitting it. But then saying that, okay, I'll try to be true to myself. I'll try to be a good person. So it basically becomes a very, very heartwarming coming-of-age story talking about how a person grows and then trying to become someone that he likes. Very, very touching stories. Alright, so I hope you will go watch these 3 movies. The Boy and the Heron, Spirited Away, and Howl's Moving Castle. I really love these 3 movies from Miyazaki. Alright, so as always, if you've got any requests or feedback for this show, Cinematic Motif, please send your email to wanson@rti.org.tw. You can also follow me on my Instagram and YouTube. My handle is @wansonscafe. Now, I have this final song for you today because Joe Hisaishi composed the film score for Miyazaki's this movie, The Boy and Heron, right? And what's more interesting about the music thing of this movie is that Kenshi Yonezu, or Mi Jing Xuan Shi, he wrote and sang the film's theme song Spinning Globe, 地球仪, and I am playing you this track right now, the theme song of The Boy and the Heron, 苍鹭与少年. So I'll leave you with the song, and thank you so much for tuning in to Cinematic Motif. I'm going to be back next week. Bye bye.
風を受け走り出す瓦礫を越えてくこの道の行く先に誰かが待ってる光さす夢を見るいつの日も扉を今開け放つ秘密を暴くように飽き足らず思い馳せる地球儀を回すように僕が愛したあの人は誰も知らないところへ行ったあの日のままの優しい顔で今もどこか遠く雨を受け歌い出す人目も構わずこの道が続くのは続けと願ったからまた出会う夢を見るいつまでもひとかけら握り込んだ秘密を忘れぬように最後まで思い馳せる地球儀を回すように小さな自分の正しい願いから始まるもの一つ寂しさを抱え僕は道を曲がる風を受け走り出す瓦礫を越えてくこの道の行く先に誰かが待ってる光さす夢を見るいつの日も扉を今開け放つ秘密を暴くように手が触れ合う喜びも手放した悲しみも飽き足らず